My dad works in B2B marketing, but I never really knew what that meant. Then one day my dad came by my school for career day and told everyone in my class he was a big ROAS man. Then he just kept saying things like, the bigger the ROAS, the better, over and over. My friends still laugh at me to this day. I think it means calculating a return on ad spend. One thing's for sure, I'll be known as the ROAS man's kid for the rest of my days. Why couldn't you just be a fireman or a lawyer? Why? You ruined my life, Dad.
Not everyone gets B2B, but LinkedIn has the people who do. And with ads on LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people based on job title, industry, likelihood to buy, and more. Start converting your B2B audience into high-quality leads today. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/MPN to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/MPN. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Matt Bailey hosts a fantastic podcast called The Endless Coffee Cup. Matt, tell these fine folks what they'll get when they listen.
At Endless Coffee Cup, we go beyond the headlines with a regular discussion of marketing news, media, and culture about our complex digital lifestyle. Of course, with my emphasis on education, I have great guests from all over the world that share their stories, giving listeners unique insights into their experiences and expertise.
Sounds super useful. Where can people subscribe?
They can go to my website at sitelogic.com or find the show at marketingpodcast.net. Or hey, we're everywhere, wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard him. Go subscribe.
Welcome to Storylines Live, the only podcast that explores the meaning and the power of the most important story in business. The one that answers why someone would buy from you, work for you, invest in you, or partner with you. This is the story that defines the very character and nature of an organization. At WordWrite, we call it your capital S story. And every episode, we feature guests who have great insights on business storytelling, who can share their experiences and key learnings to help you and your business do a better job of sharing your capital S story to deliver remarkable business results. Today, we're honored to have Moshe Amsel as our guest. Moshe, you have an amazing bio, so I'm just going to touch on pieces of it. He's the founder and CEO of Profit with Law. We're going to talk a lot about that. He's also the host of the Profit with Law podcast and the Law Firm Growth Summit. We're going to talk about all those things today. His focus is helping law firm owners grow their practice and create generational wealth. Now, that's a topic that Moshe knows something about. And, there's been a lot in popular culture recently. My dad was a flyer in World War II and a POW. So I watched Masters of the Air on Apple TV, and a big theme of that is Nazi Germany and how they treated lots of folks, most especially Jewish folks. And that's Moshe's family history. How his family got to the States. They thankfully got out of Germany, and I'm sure Moshe, you'll tell us a lot more about that. You have 6 kids. We're going to post the audio version of this first. You look well rested for having 6 kids, my friend. We're going to get into a lot of this, including his experience, an MBA, an accountant, and now his passion is helping law firm owners get the most out of their businesses. Moshe, thanks again for being here. Did I miss anything important in the brief bio there?
Yes, you absolutely did. But Paul, thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate being here. But since that bio was written, I had another child. So I have 7 children, not 6. So I kind of like got rid of one in the process. But yeah, I've got a 5-month-old baby here at home. And I guess we haven't updated all of our material that goes out to the public.
How old is your oldest?
24.
All right. Okay. At least they're spaced out a little bit.
Yeah, I've got batch one and batch two. I was married, got divorced, and got married again. So I have three daughters from my first marriage who are all grown women. As a matter of fact, they all decided to get married at the same time. We made three weddings between August and November of last year. So
Oh my
three
God.
months and 3 days, all hitched. And then people are like, "Oh, you must be poor," and I said, "You absolutely are correct." Time to replenish the bank, but really a wonderful thing for them to get started on their lives. So although it sounds daunting, 7 children, I actually have only four at home in the house here. So and batch two are 8 years old to 5 months.
All right, man. Well, you clearly have quite a bit of energy, which we're going to dig into, and really appreciate you sharing that. Um, Now, one of the reasons we wanted to have you on the podcast is because you were kind enough to have me as a guest on the Profit with Law podcast. Would you tell our audience a little bit about your podcast?
Sure, absolutely. And I mean, you focus on stories, so
Mhm.
we're going to get into my story. But through my story, I ended up working with law firm owners, and everyone knows in business, you kind of need to have a focus, whether it's a geographic focus, whether it's a industry focus, or whether it's a specific product or solution focus. But if you don't have a focus, what we call a niche, then it becomes very difficult to present yourself to a group of people because why are you talking to them? Why should they talk to you? So when I ended up working with attorneys, I happened to get some attorney clients. I noticed that 4 out of 5 of my law firm clients had similar issues with cash flow in their business. And on the outside, they looked like really healthy businesses, but on the inside, they were moving personal funds to cover payroll, cover rent. And that's a story that lots of business owners would relate to and understand. But I realized that here's, 4 out of 5 is a pretty small sample set, but it's also pretty significant.
Yes.
And I said, okay, I'm going to start with law firms, and then we'll grow from there because my ultimate goal is to help everybody with generating or creating generational wealth. And that's my real story of how I got into what I'm doing, is this generational wealth story. But I believe that the people who are most primed to create generational wealth are business owners. And I just started with law firms. So in March of 2019, when I first started working with law firm owners, I launched the Profit with Law podcast because I was an avid podcast listener. I mean, I started listening to podcasts when I had to download the show onto iTunes on my computer, sync it
Oh,
up
I
to
remember.
my iPod to be able to listen on the run. And I've loved consuming that content everywhere I've been. I mean, I listen in the shower, I listen when I'm running, I listen when I'm driving the kids to school. I mean, just listen to podcasts all the time. So it was natural for me to say, okay, I'm just going to start my own show and go from there. And what's interesting is that the podcast created the summit. So our Law Firm Growth Summit is a virtual conference for business owners that runs for 3 days. It's free to register, and then there's a paid option to get recordings, stuff like that. But I wanted to create something that nobody would have an excuse not to go. You don't have to travel. You don't have to pay. Like, why else would you not come, right? Um, but the whole idea of creating it came about through my connection with industry leaders that I
Hmm.
was interviewing on the podcast. And it was 6 months after we launched the show that I said, hey, this is something that I need to do. 3 months later, our first event happened in December of 2019.
Wow. That's great. That's amazing background there. Now, we always ask our guests on the show uh, their focus and their capital S story. So as I defined it in the show open, the capital S story answers why somebody would buy from you, work for you, invest in you, or partner with you. Of those four, what's most important to you folks right now, Moshe, in terms of running your business?
Buy for me.
Okay. And uh, when I share that with you, what are you thinking about uh, in terms of that aspect of your story? What is most engaging to the people you'd like to work with and have engage you?
I think that people want to work with somebody who really wants them to succeed.
Hmm.
And my story is all about that. And if it's okay, I'll just share the story, and
Yeah,
it'll be
please.
clear
Yeah.
to you and to your
Yeah.
listeners why somebody would want to engage with me,
Yes.
uh, to
Thank you.
work with me. So I spent 20 years in the IT industry. About 10 years into it, also around the same time that I went through my divorce, I started to reevaluate my whole life. And in that process, I looked at religion. I mean, everything that I was doing, I was just looking and saying, okay, is this really me? Is this really what I want to do? Or did I just arrive here through some happenstance?
Mhm.
One of the things I looked at was my career. And I said, well, I'm in this IT career. I'm really good at what I do. I have no problem with achieving success, but do I really want to be known for keeping somebody's server, getting somebody's server back up after it was ransomware attacked, right? Like that's my claim to fame. And when I thought about it, I said, no, I really don't. And then I started questioning, okay, what do I want to be known for? Like, what's the thing I was placed on earth to create or to leave my mark with? And when I started thinking about it, I started to think about how I was impacted in my life so far.
Mhm.
And one of the most impactful things that happened to me was a gift that I got from my grandfather. My
Mhm.
grandfather left Nazi Germany when he was 11 years old. His father was an orange merchant, so he was very well connected with people in the embassy because he did a lot of import-export trade. Through his connections, he was able to get visas for his entire family, which included my grandfather and his twin siblings. Right before they were supposed to leave, they had a boat out of Italy to Israel. They were leaving Germany to go across the border into Italy and catch that boat. His sister contracted pneumonia and she had to be hospitalized. Because the twins were younger than him and there were two of them, and his mother had to stay with one twin. She kept the other one as well. And him and his father went on that trip. It was the last chance to leave Germany, and it was the last boat to leave Italy. And his mother and twin siblings never made it out. They perished in the Holocaust. They died in Auschwitz.
Oh.
He went with his father to Israel and ultimately ended up in Washington Heights. His father had taken his whatever fortune he had and converted it into diamonds and pre-sent it to a relative in New York. So when he arrived in New York, he had his initial inventory to start a diamond merchant business, which my grandfather ended up, when he got older, ended up stepping into and doing as well. And as a business owner, he had some success. I don't know the extent or the level of his success, but I do know that he got together with four of his cousins and purchased an apartment building on the west side of Manhattan.
Mm.
And that apartment building obviously created a source of income for them over time, but it also created an asset that was building wealth. And when I was a young adult, they started selling off those units and they turned it into a co-op, started selling off individual units in the building. And he gifted all 36 of his grandchildren with the down payment of their first home purchase.
Oh,
I was one of those. At 21 years old, I became a homeowner
wow.
because I was able to skip the saving part to save a down payment and just go straight into buying the home. I was a go-getter. I mean, by 21, I was earning six figures. I was, already a few years into my IT career. I also was a dad already. I had my first daughter at 19. I'm
Wow.
really young. Um, so I was in a rush to get places in life, and clearly I did that for a lot of things. But being able to buy a home at 21 really changed the trajectory of my financial journey. It's not just the money that he gifted me for the down payment. It allowed me to be saving for retirement at a young age because I wasn't saving for the house. So it allowed me, like by the time I was 25, I had more in my retirement than most people have by the time they're 35. And all of these things play off of each other. When I went through my divorce, I was able to sell the house for a decent profit, was able to put away money, fully fund all of my children's college funds through that sale. So there a lot of things are happened as a result of that initial kindness that I received from my grandfather. My grandfather left an amazing legacy, but the impact that that had on me and probably the rest of my cousins that received it as well is massive. And it really didn't take a ton of money to do that.
Hmm.
And when I started looking at that, I said, wow, that's what I want to do. I want to help other people do what my grandfather did. I want
Yes.
to help them create not just a good lifestyle for themselves, but to actually create something that they can leave as a legacy, whether it's for children or grandchildren, or whether it's philanthropically, something that they can leave an impact on the world that goes above and beyond just them enjoying their time here. And that's when I started to help business owners. I actually went back to school, became an accountant, and started an accounting practice, and so on and so forth. But that's that's how I got to what I'm doing. So when our mission is to empower all people with wealth creation so that this and future generations can lead a better life, people now understand what that story, what's really behind it. That I'm not doing this because I'm a good accountant. I'm
Mhm.
doing this because I really care about every single person that comes into my world, that I want you to be in a position to do what my grandfather did.
Moshe, that is an amazing story. Well shared. Thank you so much. For me as the host of this podcast, we are focused on sharing the great story that is the foundation of every business. A big part of that story is the story of the founder, and you just shared that, and I really appreciate that. Folks, you're listening to Storylines Live, the only podcast that delves into the most important story in business, the capital S story, the one that answers why somebody would buy, work, invest, or partner with your organization. We'll be right back with Moshe Amsel from Profit with Law.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Matt Bailey hosts a fantastic podcast called The Endless Coffee Cup. Matt, tell these fine folks what they'll get when they listen.
At Endless Coffee Cup, we go beyond the headlines with a regular discussion of marketing news, media, and culture about our complex digital lifestyle. Of course, with my emphasis on education, I have great guests from all over the world that share their stories, giving listeners unique insights into their experiences and expertise.
Sounds super useful. Where can people subscribe?
They can go to my website at sitelogic.com or find the show at marketingpodcast.net. Or hey, we're everywhere, wherever you get your podcast.
You heard him. Go subscribe.
Thanks, folks, for being here for this episode of Storylines Live, the only podcast that delves into the meaning and the power of the most important story in business, the one that answers why someone should buy from you, work for you, invest in you, or partner with you. In this episode, we're honored to have Moshe Amsel as our guest. We've been talking about his amazing personal story and what led him to the work that he does today. We really want to dig in now to that work and better understand how Moshe and his team help the businesses they serve. So, what is it about the businesses you work with today that really delivers value from them, from your team, Moshe? Give us a little bit of a peek inside what you folks do.
Yeah, so it's very interesting because the way that I even came about working with law firms was because I first became a Profit First professional. Profit First is a book by Mike Michalowicz, which is a system, a cash management system that allows businesses to focus on profitability by essentially taking the profit out of the business first and then only using what's left to run the business, kind of forcing the hand of making better business decisions. It's almost like grandma's envelope system for budgeting at home, with various bank accounts for the business to separate the funds and not spend funds that are really not yours. For example, one of the biggest challenges that business owners have, especially early on, is not realizing that they need to save taxes all year. And then they get this massive tax bill. They're spending the next 3, 4 months paying that off. And that's if they're profitable. If they're not, they have no tax problem at all. Um, when I got my first law firm client, it was through Profit First Professional Headquarters. They gave me a referral, and it was a law firm in Manhattan who then referred me to another law firm. So that's kind of how I stepped into the legal space. But I realized that if I want to help people with creating generational wealth, I mean, I just shared that's my story.
Yes.
Uh, they have to have successful businesses. What defines a successful business is not top line revenue. So many people are out there like, oh, I want to get to 1 million. I want to get to 10 million. I want to get to 20 million. that revenue is meaningless if you're spending the same amount on the back end behind it, right? Like, so, or losing. That's even worse, right? So many people are losing money and they're like, oh, the answer is get more clients. So I'm going to spend more on marketing to get more clients to fix something that's already broken by just adding more fuel to the fire, right? So I'm just gonna increase how much I'm losing by doing that. So what we do with our clients is we help them to refocus on profitability and a really healthy profit margin. Now, a really healthy profit margin in a business is somewhere between 30 and 50%. I know it's a big range, but if you're over 30%, you're feeling pretty good, no matter where you are in your business journey. If you have 300,000 in revenue, you're making $90,000 at 30%. If you're at a million in revenue, you're making 300,000. 50%, even better, right? 300,000, you're making 150,000. A million, you're making 500,000. So that range is a really healthy range to be in. But most businesses I run into are either negative profitability, they're losing money, or they're under 10%. And it's really any size. Like we do fractional CFO services for larger law firms. I have, just a recent client that came in, 7 million plus in revenue and under 10% profit margin. And
Wow.
what's crazy is that just by refocusing on profitability, by just looking at the numbers, we literally within 90 days were able to completely reverse that. We didn't get to 30% in 3 months, but we're at 25. And that's massive because if you think about 10% of 7 million, 700,000, 25% is 2.5 times that, right? I'm not going to try to do live math here, but it's between 14 and 21 and 14 100 of sorry, 7 million is 1.4 between 1.4 and 2.1 million, right?
Right.
Massive difference between that and 500,000,
Right.
right?
There's
And
a
that's for the owner, right? So now think about what the owner can do with 500,000 in profit, and they're thinking, "Oh, I need to plow it back into the business." If you're at 2 million in profit, well, now I can take 500,000 as income or 700,000 or a million. I can also decide to put a million back into the business if I want, or I could take 2 million and I can take 1.5 million and invest in real estate or invest in the stock market or do something else with it to create that generational wealth building that I'm trying to help people achieve. So really that profitability is so important. Of course, our challenge is nobody thinks that profit's their problem. So I can't sell profit. I can't go into the marketplace and say, I'm going to make you more profitable because nobody wants to hear that. Instead, they want to hear how I'm going to get them out of overwhelm or how I'm going to get them more clients. And
right.
then we got to kind of educate them on the back end of, this is really the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so common in business. And before we started recording, I mentioned I was listening to the most recent episode of your podcast, and one of the things that was discussed was that 4 out of the 5 law firms that you'd work with, you didn't really see any differentiation, and that's the aspect that we deal with. It's like if all law firms are the same, then how are you going to have the success you want? And managing for profitability is critical, right? But also having clients is critical too, and being able to explain why you are the best choice for certain kinds of clients. Which leads me to this question. uh, what is it about law firms that you and your team find intriguing? It's clearly that's not the only kind of business you folks work with, but you put a lot of effort into developing a persona and some thought leadership around your work with law firms. What do you find attractive about working with law firms?
It's very interesting. You ask, what do I find attractive? And I'll tell you what I find attractive is also what I find challenging, because a challenge is attractive, right? The real reason that I started to dive into law firms is because I felt like it's an industry where there is money to spend on solving this problem because there's money to be made. Some industries are really, really difficult to win at, and therefore you're not just trying to help them solve the business problem, but you're also trying to help them and solve a bigger problem that
Yes.
is even more challenging. But everyone needs a lawyer for all kinds of things. The
Yes.
market is there, the need is there. You just need to say, I'm available to take it, and it's there for the taking. And my law firm clients might argue, some of them might argue that it's not that easy because they've been trying for years and they're really struggling with getting clients. And that's where
Right.
you come in with the capital with your capital S story,
Yes. Yeah.
and them getting clear on that. But really, what I wanted to do was step into my zone of genius with a client that is primed and ready to just make use of that.
Hmm.
I'm not a marketing genius. I'm not somebody who's going to come in and tell you how to get more clients. We do that as part, it's a component of what we do, but
Yes.
we do it at a cursory level. I'm going to encourage my clients to go hire marketing geniuses. Don't try to think you're amazing at marketing as a business owner. Most business owners, probably 90%, I don't know, I'm making up this number, but probably 90% of business owners know enough about marketing to keep themselves stuck because they think they could do it themselves, and therefore they don't bring in the talent that's going to really make the change for them, really shift the needle for them. And even personally, I've been going through this journey myself because we've many times tried to do things ourselves, and always find that when we bring in an outside professional company that does this day in day out, we get
Mhm.
much better results. So why do we keep trying to do it ourselves? I don't know. But our clients are the same thing. And I'm not trying to solve the top line problem. I'm not trying to solve
Yeah.
hey, how do we bring in more business? Because the solution to that is just, okay, decide which is the right marketing tactic and then hire the professional for that. The problem is that no matter how much you bring in, if you're not priced correctly, if you don't have the right efficiencies and processes in your business, and you're not paying attention to the numbers, it's very easy to allow something to just go on autopilot. And the age-old adage that if an airplane takes off from LA going to New York and it's off by 1 degree, it'll end up in Vancouver, or it'll end up in Vancouver's a bad example. That's the wrong
Right.
coast. It'll end up in on the
Austin,
east coast of
something like
Canada, right? Or it'll
that.
end up
Right.
in Florida, right?
Yeah.
So business is the same thing. If I'm overspending in a category and I don't realize it,
Mm-hmm.
then we're going to continue, and all of a sudden we show up and we're at a $10 million business, and I'm still not making any money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we don't. Why? What? You just spent 5 years getting there. You have a lost 5 years.
Yeah.
If you had focused on profitability all along, you'd be in a completely different position because you would have been making money all along the way. You can still grow the business even though you're making money. Like, people just think that it's a choice. I either grow my business or I make money. It's not one, it's not both.
Yeah. That is great insight, Moshe. It really, really is. What gives you the most satisfaction in the work you do?
Honestly, it's when I hear the wins.
Yeah.
When I hear somebody say, I have a client that is a triathlete. And I mean, she was doing triathlons before she came into my world. It's not like, oh, she worked with me and now she gets to go to all these triathlons.
Exactly.
But now she goes to a triathlon and she has a team of 6 people. When she came in, she had one person working for her. Now she's got a team of 6. When she goes to a triathlon, she turns off from business and she
Right.
goes and focuses on the race.
Yeah.
Whereas before, that she was probably putting out fires, when she was out there traveling for a race. I have another one who took a 9 day or 10 day Disney vacation with her family. First time she was ever able to do that, because of the systems and the processes that we helped them put in place, and the profit results that they had. So they had the money to spend on the vacation, but more importantly, the time to be able to detach and go and do that. It's those wins where that's when I get the feedback that we have effectuated a positive change. And I mean, what will really excite me is when I've got clients I've been working with long enough that they've created that wealth that I'm talking about, where they've now created that legacy. But that takes time. So it's building blocks and we're getting there. But all those small little feedback stories are really, really awesome,
That is
to just to get to know that we're making that change.
That is great. Thanks for sharing that. And two great examples there of the success that you and your team help create for your clients. I teased at the beginning of this episode that we would talk about the summit. So I do want to chat about that before we close things out. Um, as we're recording this, we have one coming up. There's one every year. Give the audience a sense of why you do the summit and what can be expected if they're interested in attending.
Absolutely. So I surveyed the landscape of the law firm industry and realized that really the only education that attorneys attend are conferences. You go to an event, you meet people, make connections, and get educated on various areas of the business that you do. Problem is that legal conferences primarily are focused on the practice of law. And somebody will throw a track in here or a track in there. So there'll be a session on marketing, or there'll be a session on, systems and process, or a session on team. But there's no focus on business as the main theme of the event.
Yes.
I decided to create such an event where there's no focus on practicing law. It's for lawyers, but we do everything but. We talk about marketing, we talk about sales, we talk about teams and systems and processes, we talk about finances and taxes, all the things that are important for you to know, to be educated on, and to know what is working for everyone else, what are the leaders saying, and get that insight. I also realized that there's a lot of people out there who do what I do, but there's nobody who competes with me because of the capital S story, right? There's
Yeah,
nobody who competes with me because there's nobody who has my story. And
exactly.
therefore, if I bring all of the people who are thought of as my competitors, but are really experts and thought leaders in the industry, and bring them all into one event,
Mhm.
it's going to create way more value for the community than I could possibly do myself.
Yes.
And that's what we did. The first event we did was all pre-recorded. It was 5 days. And then the next event was during COVID, and we stepped it up and we said, okay, we're gonna do this live. So it's morphed into a live conference that's done virtually. But essentially, you attend from your computer, and we have 35 or somewhere between 35 and 40 speakers that are speaking at the conference over 3 days. Now, you can't consume all of that in 3 days because we do some our breakout sessions. So we do 6 at a time of the breakout sessions, but we have 4 amazing keynote speakers that we're going to be announcing leading up to the event. We have some really great main stage speakers. I'm super excited about the upcoming one because every time we run this, we get better at what we do. So we
Mhm.
get better at selecting the speakers, and we have a selection process. We're actually vetting 15 of the speakers are the people that we've invited as keynote or our sponsors that are speaking. So there's about 20 speakers that we invite, and we're pulling them from a pool of 70 applicants.
That is great.
We have just such a name in the industry that everyone who has something to share wants to do it at our event. So we get to look at it and say, what is going to be the most valuable thing to give to our audience, and put together a package that is just something you're just not going to be able to experience somewhere else. Amazing connections can happen as well. We do a lot of work to create within the technology an area for people to connect and network. This year, I don't know if we're going to succeed, but we're really trying to do geographic and practice area meetups.
That's great.
So we basically want to connect estate planning lawyers with estate planning lawyers, family lawyers with family lawyers, and we also want to connect lawyers that are in New York with lawyers that are in New York. It's a big undertaking, but that's a big focus for us this year, is to try to facilitate connections that are meaningful, because so much business is exchanged between lawyers.
Yes.
There's a huge value of having connections in those two areas, either local, because an estate planning lawyer might get somebody who's looking for a criminal lawyer, but they don't do criminal law. So if they know a criminal lawyer they can send them to, boom, you've got a referral source, right? Same thing with family law, right? Somebody might be going through a divorce, but they're moving to this other area and you can't help them, but your friend who you met at the event, who's also a family lawyer, can help them because they're in the right location. So there's a real beauty in that connection in the legal industry. And we have sponsors who have exhibit booths. We do a swag bag, so we send out physical swag, so you're not missing out on that. And you don't have to pack it in your bag and take it home on the airplane, right? Like we're shipping it to your house. So some really cool stuff that you get with the event. But it's you don't want to miss it. May 21st to May 23rd. We specifically do it at a time when people don't want to travel. So it's right butt up against Memorial Day weekend. We know that it was done on purpose, and just take an extra week off. Block your calendar. It's only 3 days. May 21st to May 23rd. Lawfirmgrowthsummit.com is where you can go to register, and registration's free.
Moshe, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing all that. Very exciting, and very, very impressed by what you've been able to do in a short time with the summit. It's just awesome. In addition to the URL you just shared for the summit, how can people find you online?
Yeah, so profitwithlaw.com is the other place you want to go. There you can get to our YouTube channel, get to our podcast, find out more about our coaching programs, our fractional CFO services, our tax accounting business, anything that you want for us to be able to support you in the realm, the world that we play is there, including my story. Go to the About page. You can read up some more, but I think I think I nailed it here on the Capital S show, right? Like it's
Yes, you did, my friend. Great.
But profitwithlaw.com is the website.
Awesome. Moshe, thanks again for joining us for this episode of Storylines Live. Folks, it's been a great pleasure to have you along for the ride on the only podcast that explores the power and the meaning of the most important story in business, the one that answers why somebody would buy from you, work for you, invest in you, or partner with you, your capital S story. We'll see you next time on Storylines Live.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Matt Bailey hosts a fantastic podcast called The Endless Coffee Cup. Matt, tell these fine folks what they'll get when they listen.
At Endless Coffee Cup, we go beyond the headlines with a regular discussion of marketing news, media, and culture about our complex digital lifestyle. Of course, with my emphasis on education, I have great guests from all over the world that share their stories, giving listeners unique insights into their experiences and expertise.
Sounds super useful. Where can people subscribe?
They can go to my website at sitelogic.com or find the show at marketingpodcast.net. Or hey, we're everywhere, wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard him. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.